Thank everybody for being here this afternoon. We are going to be talking with Greg Compton today. He's got a lot of things he wants to share with everybody. He basically called us up and wanted to do this and film this for posterity because this is an important event that happened in his life and still affects him today. So we'll let him get into that and talk to us about it today. Greg, I think we should probably start off getting to know a little bit about you, where you started, where you made your footprint in Waxahachie, and kind of where it all began. So I'm going to let you start off and give us a little bit of your history.
Well, I never felt like I had a childhood. I feel like I was born a man, and I want to explain that. My parents had 2 boys and 3 girls, and I was in the middle. And I don't know why it always seems like the responsibility falls on the middle child, but it seems to be that way in life. So when we were young, we would live between Waxahachie and Fort Worth. My dad was a house painter, and he would move wherever the work was at. And it was like being a gypsy is what I felt like. I mean, we would move somewhere and pay a month's rent, and it would take them 2 months to serve us with a writ, and we'd have to go find somewhere else to live. And every car that my parents ever bought was repossessed, so we usually didn't have a vehicle. We never had a washer and dryer at home. We never had a telephone at home. It was just, you didn't eat till you were full. You ate till it was gone, whatever there was to eat. And my mom and dad had a 3rd grade education. They just didn't know how to manage money. And so I had 2 newspaper routes with the Waxahachie Daily Light. And then I went to Mr. Fry's property behind the cemetery. There's a big pecan orchard. And I would pick up pecans, and he got half of what I picked up. And so I'd done everything that I could to try to help. I gave every nickel I made to my mother, But it just still seemed like it wasn't enough. We were still, we'd get evicted and we'd have to move in with a family member, a nephew or a niece or one of his brothers or sisters. Well, there were 7 of us. It's not like that was a convenient thing to do.
Right.
And so, but somehow we always found a place to lay our head. And so finally, one day I was walking down Ferris Avenue, and I seen a help wanted sign in the Jack-in-the-Box window. So I went up and applied for the job. I was 12 years old, and I told them I was 18. But I was a pretty stocky guy back then, and I could pass for 18. So they didn't even ask for my ID. They hired me on the spot, working graveyard shift by myself, 11 to 7.
Oh, wow.
So my parents had gotten in financial trouble again, and they told me, Greg, we're moving to Arlington. And I said, okay. So we moved to Arlington to Division Street. 7 of us stayed in a 1-room motel.
Oh, wow.
With 1 bed, 1 full-size bed. And we couldn't go up and ask for extra pillows and blankets because they would know how many of us there was. So we just pretty much, I transferred to the Jack-in-the-Box in Arlington on 303. And I worked there, and I had turned 14, and I was going on 15. And I had this guy that came through the drive-through. From 11 to 7, only the drive-through was open. You couldn't come in the dining room. And he would come through, and he had this beautiful white Silverado pickup with loud pipes on it and Krager mags. And, it was just a beautiful truck, burgundy on the inside. And I got to know this guy. His name was Chuck. And he finally come through one night, and he goes, Greg, I'd like for you to come to work for me. I said, really, what do you do? He said, I own a convenience store, but he said, I pioneered cashing payroll checks. This is back when nobody else done it.
Right.
And when I say he cashed payroll checks, he had about a 3,500 square foot convenience store. We sold beer, barbecue, cigarettes, bongs, hats. I mean, we sold it all.
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop. And so he said, I want you to come to work for me cashing checks and helping me on. And I said, well, how much does it pay? Because Jack-in-the-Box was paying me $1.35 an hour. He said, I'll give you $1.75 an hour. I said, I'm putting my notice in the morning. So I gave him my 2-week notice, and I left, and I went to work for Chuck. I told him I was 19. I'll never forget you have to look back and laugh on this now. Clarice Tinsley had just started with Channel 4 News, and I've watched Channel 4 my whole life. I just like Channel 4. And so when you would walk in our store in the front door, to the left was 2 cash registers, and all the way to the back was glass showcases lined up, and there was a booth where I would sit in a booth and Chuck would sit in a booth. And he was sending me back and forth to the bank with $80,000 to $100,000 worth of payroll checks that I would cash in and bring the cash back. I didn't even have a license. This is a true story. We didn't even have a safe in our store.
Wow.
And so I'd done this for a long time, and man, we stayed busy. God, we stayed so busy. And as fast as we could count the money, well, on the left-hand side of our tills, in the far left, we had 5 $100 bills. Well, back then, you could rig your alarm to go straight to the police department, and if we pulled that 5, it set off an alarm at the police station. So one day, the phone rings, and we had one of them phones that hung on the wall, and it had about a 40-foot cord on it, where you could walk all over the store.
Yeah.
Because we would call the bank and tell them, this is how much money I've got in checks, and get this many hundreds for me, 20s, 10s, 5s, I need some change. That way when I got there, I didn't have to wait. They had it waiting on me. So one day, the phone rang, and I answered it, and I said, this is Arlington Police Department. We need to talk to Chuck Reynolds. I said, okay. I put Chuck on the phone, and I seen him stand up, and he just looked startled, and he hung the phone up and said, Greg, I got to go. His son was a quarterback for Sam Houston High School there in Arlington. And he said, Chuck Jr. has been in a wreck out on I-20. I'll be back when I can get back. I said, okay, I got this. So I keep cashing checks. I hear Chuck's truck start in the back because of the loud pipes, and I hear him take off. It wasn't a minute later, I'm on the phone with the bank while I'm cashing checks, and I hear this loud noise, and the back door of the store kicks in. And it's 4 men wearing gorilla masks with motorcycle helmets holding 12 gauges.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, man, I thought. And our store probably had over 100 people inside the store. It was raining outside that day, and the back was muddy. It wasn't concrete. And they busted through the door, and 2 of them hit the registers up front, and 2 of them jumped the showcases and came to the back to me. And they ripped the phone off the wall, and this guy stuck this 12 gauge under my nose and tilted my head back, and he said, do you want to die, you SOB? And I said, no, and he popped a paper sack and said, fill it up. Well, I had about 75,000 back there then. And he even got a cloth bag and had me put all the quarters, nickels, and dimes in it.
Oh, wow.
So they got right under $80,000. Well, they took me, and they held me at gunpoint, and they laid all of us on the floor. Then they proceeded to rob all of us, because I had just cashed everybody's check. So they were taking jewelry, and they were taking money, and they were taking... And the guy's still standing over me. All I can see is his feet. I'm face down, and I can feel that 12 gauge on the back of my neck, and he goes, whenever we leave, I'm taking this guy with me. He's talking about me.
Yeah.
You're taking me as a hostage? Oh, my God. I was terrified. I just started praying. I didn't know what else to do, and I thought, this is it. This is the end for me. And so anyway, when they got through robbing everybody, now keep in mind the alarm's still going off.
You pulled that 5.
Yeah, on both tills. That was the first thing I grabbed.
Right.
And so suddenly they said, we want everybody to count from 1 to 100. And don't nobody get up until you get to 100. Instead of taking me, I barely raised my head up. I was trying to see anything I could that might help. And I seen a guy in front of me about my age, and he was grinning. I thought, that's weird. Well, they took him as a hostage. Well, come to find out, he was in on the robbery. He was a dud. The guy that robbed me, his name was Alan Kahn. I'll never forget that name, because they called him. And the woman driving the car out back, waiting on him, her name was Karen Valentine. And when they got out of the store, they told her that they got $20,000 cash. They split it 5 ways. Well, she read in the newspaper and on the news how much they really got. And so she turned state's evidence and testified as to who they were and testified at trial, and she wasn't charged.
Yeah.
But here's what's scary. I look up and I see Clarice Tinsley walking in the front door with a cameraman. And I thought, oh, God, I need to duck out. I was afraid if my parents seen that I'd been robbed, they'd make me quit my job.
Right.
And they couldn't pay rent without my help.
Right.
This can't happen. I got to have a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so a detective walked up to me and he goes, Greg, I need to see your driver's license. Chuck standing right beside me. I said, I don't have a driver's license. I said, I got an ID card. He said, let me see that. I showed it to him. He said, you're 15 years old? And my boss said, you're what? Let me tell you why it flipped him out so bad. So his parents lived in Goldswaite. Mm-hmm. And he would go out of town to see his parents. They were elderly, and to help them. You know what he would tell me to do with that money? We didn't have a safe. Greg, put it in money bags and take it home and sleep with it under your pillow. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
Many a nights. That's what I did.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he finds out I'm 15. He lived down the street on Matlock Road about a half mile from the store on the left. And if he was in town, when I closed the store up that night, I would take all the money to his house and give it to him. And then I'd come in the next morning. We just had our routine, you know. So when he looked at me and found out I was 15, I said, well, Chuck, I'm going to go ahead and punch out and I'll walk home. He goes, you're not punching out? I said, I'm not. He said, no. He said, you need to go back there and go to work. He said, we got people waiting in line. He said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you use my truck, and I'm going to let you get your hardship license to drive.
Right.
And I'm going to co-sign for you to get a car. I said, wow. You are? He said, yeah. This is an important part of the story here. So Chuck gets my license. I'm able to drive back and forth to work or back and forth to the bank, mm-hmm. you know, as long as it was work-related. And he co-signed for me a car. And he said, Greg, I want you to do me a favor. It's your first car. Don't get a Camaro or a Trans Am. I said, okay, because that's exactly what I planned on doing. Of
course, yeah.
So instead, I was looking through Auto Trader, and I found this 76 Cutlass. Beautiful car. It was root beer brown with doe-skin fenders, and it had a doe-skin half moon roof on it.
Nice.
And it had a sunroof, and it had Krager mags, and it was jacked up. And it was thebomb.com, let me tell you. Bucket seats. Oh, I look pretty sitting in that car, Helen. You should have seen me.
So did he let you get that one?
He let me get that one because it was a 6-cylinder.
Oh, okay.
So I got to get that one. And I took it home to show my mom and dad, and my mom goes, Greg, give me the keys. I got to take your sister to the mall. And what time do I pick you up tonight? I said, oh, I just bought my parents a car. Guess what? It's the first car they ever had that was never repossessed. Oh, wow. I made every payment on it and paid for it. She did let me take it one time, though, on a date on a Friday night.
Well, that was nice of her.
But I had to be at home by 10.
Oh.
You know, so it was really scary. And like I said, I just never felt like I had a childhood. I always, till this day, I still feel like I'm my dad's dad. He's always came to me to solve his problems, for advice, for what have you. And so as a young man, the one date I went on, I married her. And we had 3 sons. And Chuck called me to his office one day and he said, Greg, I'm fixing to do you the biggest favor I've ever done you. And I said, what? He said, I'm going to fire you. I said, fire me? I said, I work day and night. I work harder than everybody in this store put together. He said, I know. And you're going to be missed. He said, but I'm going to tell you now, if I don't make you go get a real job, you're never going to be able to support your family. And he said, plus you support your parents. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So I think I was at $2.05 an hour then. So I just, off the street, I just walked into a Safeway store. I didn't know they were union. I didn't know what a union was.
Right.
And I said, are y'all looking for help? I'm a hard worker and I'm dependable. And Mr. Robbins said, yeah, I could always use somebody like that. He said, fill this out. So he said, be here in the morning at 10 o'clock. And I started sacking groceries at Safeway for $6.71 an hour.
Woo!
It's quite a race.
We went on up.
And so I started sacking groceries at Safeway, and I worked my way all the way up past the store managers, past the district managers, into the division office in Garland, Texas.
Wow.
And I would go in stores and pull audits with no warning. You never knew I was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I could come day or night. And I was over all of them. And I loved it. I loved my job. By then, I'm making $15 an hour. Plus, I'm getting $25 a day for food. Plus, a credit card for rooms if I had to go out of town.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, 29 cents a mile for gas for using my car. Man, I was making money like you can't believe. So that, it just shows how another dark cloud, how God, that old saying, if you're ever going to see a rainbow, you have to stand in a little rain.
Right.
And that's where I was at in life. And so then finally, Safeway food stores, they closed in Texas.
Right.
Boy, they offered me to go to California, but nah, I didn't want to go to California.
No.
I'd been there to visit, and I just didn't, nah.
You're a Texas boy.
Yeah, I want to stay here.
Yeah.
So I went to work for affiliated food stores, and my job there was all the stores were independently owned. I was called a troubleshooter. When a store got in trouble and they couldn't pay their bills and couldn't pay affiliated for the groceries and stuff like that, I'm the guy that went out and repossessed your grocery store.
Oh.
By then, most employees were still, and I'd hire brand new staff. I'd get the store stocked up, run some hot ads, and sell the store to a new owner. And I traveled the whole state of Texas doing that.
Yeah.
And then the board of directors that affiliated Mr. Ross Cangelosi, he was about this tall and the meanest man I've ever known.
Short man syndrome.
Ugh. He'd say, Greg, baby, come here. So he always called me baby. Come here, baby. Come have coffee with Mr. Ross. Well, he hired me to run one of his stores in Arlington, Texas. And I was there. I loved my job. I had a good job. He took good care of me. And all of a sudden, my first wife got addicted to drugs, and I wound up divorcing her. I wound up getting full custody of all three of my sons. And she got supervised visitation only. She couldn't even take them out on the playground to play. And it was just such a dangerous situation. And she wound up being charged with injury to a child neglect, and child abuse on all three kids. And so she was looking at prison time. And anyway, I got the kids, and that's when I started Compton's Cleaning and Restoration. Mm-hmm. I had $300 left after I paid my bills. And I had some flyers printed up. I had a Home Depot bag, and I would stick them in that bag, the flyers, and tape on this side. And I'd get my boys, Cody was 3 at the time, and I would walk with all of them through neighborhoods, taping it on everybody's front door. And I found out that over a period of time, if I got 1% return, I was doing good. Mm-hmm. Then when I would show up with them, I would show up with my carpet cleaning machine, a portable, and I would have them with me. And I'd say, Miss Helen, my kids are well behaved. I'm a single parent trying to start a new business. I can't afford a babysitter, and nobody ever turned us down.
Oh, yeah, no.
And then Cody and the boys wound up cleaning most of those people's carpets later on in life.
There you go.
It's just like a generational thing, and we've been going for 31 years now.
Yeah.
And
I want to interject something, and that is that y'all have, you're a fixture in this town. Everybody knows Compton's. I think most people who need your service use you. And you are a wonderful sponsor for In the Music Room, what Randy Tredway and I do. And we appreciate you.
And we love
so
sponsoring you guys. If you guys have never been here, if this is your first time, you've got to come back. They usually have, everybody brings a covered dish. You got live music from all over the world, literally. People come here from Europe, from Germany.
Everywhere.
I've seen, I don't even know how many acts here. It's a first-class operation. And so, you know that old song, Helen, life's a dance you learn as you go? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you lead and sometimes you follow. It seems like my whole life, and I'm thankful for this, though. My whole life, God has put me in a position where, Greg, all you can do is depend on me. Mm-hmm. You can't depend on so-and-so. You can't depend on... you don't have nowhere to go to borrow money from anybody. You don't have, I mean, I borrowed money from the banks as I got built up, of course, and as our business expanded. But I never, honestly, the only person that I can think of that's really ever helped me was Chuck. And I didn't even ask him to help me. And I sure wasn't going to let him down.
Well, he saw something in you, and he gave you that chance, and it was up to you to prove yourself to him, and you did.
And guess what? 10 years ago, some guys from the Middle East come to Chuck. By now, he had built 3 stores. And they go, we want to buy your stores. And they made him an unbelievable offer, astronomical. He took it. He calls me and goes, Greg, think you can teach me how to clean carpet? I want to open a carpet cleaning business. I said, yeah.
That's
I
so
got
cool.
this. I got this. He's a hustler.
Yeah.
He would loan money out and like Loan Shark.
Yeah.
He would bet on games. He would gamble. He didn't miss a trick to make $1.
Yeah.
He taught me a lot about street knowledge. And I mean that. He would take me with him when he would go to these places. And I would watch how he would function with these people and how he would, are you guys ready for this? I was a kid. I'm 15, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do what my boss tells me. Every Thursday evening, he went out and got drunk in Fort Worth. And I mean drunk. He would come back to the store. He'd throw me a 38. He'd get a 38, put it in his waistband. He'd say, Greg, these are the hot checks that came back. I said, okay. He goes, we're going to go collect them. I said, I thought the police done that. He goes, nope, I do that. We would knock on their doors, and they would answer, and we would point a 38 at him. And this man meant business.
Oh my
and he would say, you're either going to give me the money for this check, or Greg's going to haul your TV out, your living room furniture, your bedrooms. And I would go back to the store and have a yard sale on the parking lot. This is a true. I was doing home invasions and didn't know it.
I
know. I mean, cause I didn't go to my dad for anything. I mean, my dad came to me for everything.
Right.
I mean, so I just thought, well, I didn't know this is how they collect bad checks in Texas.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty cool. So then he goes, Greg, I want to start giving you my truck every Saturday night. And every Sunday morning, we had a list of people. We had a list of people that in their house, they had taken a room similar to this, and they had converted it and built a bar against the back wall, and they had a couple pool tables, a jukebox, because bars weren't legal back then in this area, in Grand Prairie aren't. So they would stay open all night, and they would sell beer, and it had a big sign in there, no beers for sale, but tips are welcome. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Always a way around it. And so he said, you couldn't sell beer until 12 o'clock on Sunday morning.
Right.
He would say, here's a list. I want you to get 25 cases of Coors, 30 cases of Coors Light, 40 cases of Budweiser. I want you to put them in my truck and go to these addresses and deliver them. So that's what I did. My boss told me to do it. I mean, I didn't ask no questions.
Right.
I guess I was a good foot soldier.
You were.
I'd have been good in the military, I guess.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, one morning when I pull back into the store, these 2 men walk up in suits, and they pull out badges, and they go, Greg? And I said, yeah. Could I help you? He said, we're with the Liquor Control Board, and we've been following you this morning. He said, we need your ID. I said, crap. I said, is what I'm doing against the law? He said, you're a bootlegger. I said, I am? I said, I'm a bootlegger? I said, that's kind of like bragging rights. Like I see that stuff up in the mountains of Tennessee. It's on TV, Dukes of Hazzard and all that. So now I do home invasions and I'm a bootlegger.
Hey.
And
you do it so well.
Yeah. And you know what amazes me? We never got in trouble.
Yeah, times were a little different.
We never got in trouble. When I had to go to, my ticket said, when I got caught with that beer, you have to appear before a judge in Fort Worth. I thought, okay, no big deal. I'll appear and pay a fine. Nope, I appeared and he said, you got the right to remain silent. They arrested me. The bailiff handcuffed me. Now remember, I'm 15. I told them I was 20. They put me in a cell with all these grown men.
Oh, no.
The jailer was shaking me down. He said, man, you look terrified. I said, I am. And he said, look, when you go in that jail, don't have that look on your face, that cell. He said, you better look tough. He said, if they ask you what you're in here for, you tell them murder. And look them straight in the eye. And back then they had the old bars where you could stick your arms out. I had my arms sticking out, and this jailer came by, and bam! You know, what are you trying to do, grab me? No, I'm not trying to get out of here. Finally, my boss bailed me out.
Oh, wow.
It took about 5 or 6 hours, though. Oh, I was terrified. So I've been through the ringer. But with all that being said, when I went through my divorce and everything and got the boys, and I started Compton's carpet cleaning with a hope, a dream, and a prayer. You know, the Bible says, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. And I'm going to tell you something, Helen, I was humble. I laid my Bible on the floor, and I got in the shower, and I was in a pair of boxers, and the boys were in bed. And I lit a candle, and I laid my forehead on that Bible. I talked to God. I begged God. I prayed to God. I don't know how long I was there. I lost track of time, to be honest with you. And I said, God, I'm not getting up until you humble me. I'm just not. And finally, I felt this humbling sensation come over me, and I rose. And I said, all right, God, now make me a man with a vision that's on a mission. And that's when I started. They repossessed my house. I lost my car finally. Lost all my credit cards. But, you know, here's what I figured in life. I was already down at the bottom. All I could do was go up. Anything I'd done to improve myself, my life, my children's life, you know, I was moving on up. And so I was very consistent, very hardworking, very determined. You know, I wouldn't take no for an answer. I wouldn't do it.
Right.
And it turned out good for us over the years. And then to move on up the ladder a little bit, in March of 2016, I woke up that morning and I had a real bad pain in my lower back. And Helen, you know I don't miss work. You know, I don't. And so that day I told Ginger, I said, man, you're going to have to cancel my appointments. I don't think I can make it today. She goes, well, just stay home in bed and rest. I was sitting on the edge of the bed just like this. And all of a sudden the TV went from being here to here in my brain.
Wow.
And I was seeing 3 TVs, and I looked over at the dresser, I was seeing 3 dressers. I was holding my landline phone, and I looked at it, and I seen 3 hands and 3 phones. And I thought, I need to get up and get some fresh air. I stood up, and my legs were like spaghetti noodles. They just collapsed onto the floor.
Oh, wow.
So John Kidna, who used to play with the Dallas Cowboys, had just moved across the street from us. And him and his wife was building a prayer room onto their house, so they had the construction crews over there. And I thought, if I can get to the front door and reach up and grab it, I can wave my arm and maybe one of them will see me, because I couldn't move my left side. So I was scooting through the whole house. I made it to the front door, got it open. Nobody over there ever seen me. So finally something told me to put my hand over my left eye, and I did. And I seen one of everything. In my head, I had a horrible headache, tingling in my head. I called Ginger. I said, help, ambulance, help. That's all I could say. I couldn't hardly talk. And I heard her truck coming down our road a few minutes later. She had Daryl with her. And they went to the bedroom looking for me, in the master bathroom, through the kitchen, through the living room, I was laying outside the front door.
Oh, gosh.
They finally found me. She had already called an ambulance. So an ambulance came and picked me up, and I went to the hospital, and I seen a nurse practitioner. And I've got a lot of great nurse practitioners that I see. So I don't want you to think I'm down on them, but this particular one misdiagnosed me and said I had vertigo and sent me back home. Gave me a pain shot and sent me home. So my sisters would come down every other Sunday, and it was their Sunday to come down, and they came to my house, and I was in bed, and I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I couldn't eat. And they said, you're going back out to the hospital, brother, right now. So, Kyle, was it you? Somebody came over and picked me up and put me in the truck.
It may have been.
He's done it so many times, I don't know. And so I go back out of the hospital, and this time I see a doctor. He runs another CT scan. He goes, man, you've had 2 massive strokes. I said, yeah, I figured I had. They admitted me. So once I got released, I went to Big Baylor for rehab. I went to the Baylor out here for rehab. I went to a place in Arlington for rehab. And I finally learned to walk again. Now, my left side still stays asleep. My left arm, that's why if I hold a cup or something, I hold it with both hands. Because I'm prone to drop it. You know, so, but I had those 2 massive strokes, and I was awake when I had them. A lot of people are asleep when they have them. And that was quite a life-changing event for me. But I eventually learned how to walk again. I went back to work. You know, I got things under control. I was doing real good. And then we rock along to March 18th, March of 2018. January. So this had been going on for about 6 weeks. I was a workaholic, and I didn't stop for nothing. I didn't eat breakfast. I didn't eat lunch. And a lot of times I didn't eat dinner. Kyle can verify that, too. And I didn't stop. I was out to make a buck, man. I mean, I was serious. And I was going to set this world on fire. So I got to where I would swallow my food, and it would go down to about right here, maybe 4 bites, and it would get hung. And I thought, man, what? And it would come back up. So I got to where I could just eat Jell-O and guacamole, drink protein drinks, trying to stay healthy, you know, because I wasn't going to take off long enough to go to the doctor. So finally I went and I stopped at Jack in the Box. I claim those 99-cent tacos saved my life.
Oh, yeah.
I stopped there. I was so hungry my hands were shaking.
Yeah.
And this was like on a Friday. And I said, give me 2 tacos. I ate them before I got out of the drive-thru. I was that hungry. Well, they immediately came right back up. And I thought, okay, this is it. I got to go see Dr. Bousquet. So I went and seen Dr. Bousquet. He worked me in, and I said, Doc, I need you to take my gallbladder out tonight or tomorrow, because I've got a Florida strip selling wax on Sunday, and it's an all-day job. And he said, he always calls me Dr. Compton because I diagnosed myself.
Right.
He goes, well, Dr. Compton, if you don't mind, I'm going to send you to that surgery center on Main Street, and they're going to put a camera down your throat. I said, you're just milking my insurance company. You know, just giving him a hard time. He gives me a hard time. We have a lot of fun. And so I wake up from anesthetic, and the doctors are there, and I said, well, did y'all get my gallbladder out? And they said, no, Greg, your gallbladder's fine. I said, well, what's wrong? Why can't I hold food down? He said, because you've got a 12-inch cancerous tumor on your esophagus going down into your stomach. And he said the tumor has gotten so big it's pressed against your esophagus and closed it off where you can't swallow food. He goes, we know from experience you're in stage 4. And I'm laying there on that bed just coming to going, I asked him, I said, am I dreaming or am I really awake? And they said, no, you're really awake. They said, you want us to go out to the waiting room and tell Ginger? I said, oh, no, don't tell her. And they said, well, you got to do something. You hear them sirens? I said, yeah. He said, they're coming for you. And I said, why? And he said, they're taking you to the Salmon's Cancer Center at Baby Baylor out here, and they want to go back down your throat and take a look themselves. They're waiting on you. Sure enough, when I got there, they were waiting in the foyer for me. They put me on a gurney and took me back, put me under again, and they woke me up and told me, Greg, you got stage 4 cancer. And it's laying on top of your kidneys. It's in your lymph nodes in your chest. I said, so just like that, I mean, I go from being this working stud to basically you've just handed me a death sentence, basically. I tell you, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Oh, yeah.
See, again, I'm telling you, God puts me in these positions where I have to depend on Him. I can't depend on anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I think He does that for a reason, to keep me closer to Him in prayer and reading and meditating. And so that day, they started chemo and radiation on me. And I didn't ask any questions. I was shell-shocked.
I bet.
I mean, I was just, I got home that night, and Ginger put me to bed, and I laid there and tossed and turned and thought about it, and, just how did this happen? Why wasn't there any warning signs any sooner? Why, cancer is that silent killer that'll sneak up on you.
Or were you actually just ignoring it because you were the working stud?
That's possible too. I'm sure it was a little bit of both. And so I took chemo and radiation every day for 6 weeks. When I started out, I weighed 270 pounds. I went down to 134. And me and Ginger would sit at the cantina, and people would come over and hug her and talk to her and say, "How's Greg doing?" They didn't know it was me sitting there.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I just looked horrible. I mean, Kyle looked fat, back then. And so they said, my doctors came in the room. There was a total of 7 or 8 of them. And they said, "Greg, we're thinking about attempting surgery on you." He said, "What if we told you it was 60-40 chance?" I said, "Well, I like Texas Hold'em. I'm a gambler. I'll take that." They said, "Well, what if we told you it was 40-60? He said, "What if we told you your chances are slim to none, and none's out of town and Slim's at home packing?"
Oh, wow.
I said, "Woo-wee." Now I said, "I smell what you're stepping in.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to go any further." I get this. I said, "Look, if you guys will attempt the surgery, if I die, I know y'all have done everything in your power to save me. And y'all know I've done everything in my power. Y'all told me to be a good foot soldier, and that you were my general and my lieutenants and sergeants, and that's what I've done. I've not asked any questions, nothing.
Right.
But if you think there's a chance, I want to take it." I said, "Okay." They scheduled the surgery. Again, I didn't ask no questions about the surgery. I was in there 8.5 hours.
Wow.
And I didn't know this. They stood me against a wall and strapped me to it to do the surgery.
Wow.
Did you know they do that, Doc?
Wow.
Well, I tell you what, he's done a lot of surgeries on me. I don't ever remember being strapped to a wall. But, so anyway, I come out, I was in a coma, and the next day, I knew I was in a coma because every once in a while my brain would wake up, but I couldn't open my eyes or move I couldn't move nothing on my body.
Right.
Well, finally, about the 3rd time I woke up, I could hear Ginger next to my bed crying, and I was able to move my index finger. So I scratched like this on the sheet and pointed towards her to let her know I can hear you. Mm-hmm. And I had some more relatives in there and some friends, and so I finally come out of that coma, and the doctors just happened to be in my room when I did. And they said, "Greg, guess what? We took you down for a PET scan while you were under. You're cancer-free." I said, "What? How can I be cancer-free?" They said, "We removed your entire esophagus, your entire stomach. The bottom inch of your stomach wasn't ate with cancer. We made a little ball and put it right here, and we pulled your intestines up to it. Mm-hmm. And we scraped it off the top of your kidneys, and we took 50 lymph nodes out of your chest." I didn't know you had that many in your body.
I didn't know you had that many.
And they said, "You've got to get up and walk." Well, I had these huge machines on either side of me in my room. As best I could tell, they were filtering my blood. There was big tubes going into the back of my lungs. I guess that's what they were doing. And they had taken it, looked like a leather punch, and went up between my nose and the bridge on the inside, mm-hmm. and punched holes. And they wired tubes going in my nose where I couldn't pull them out.
Oh, wow.
I had tubes sticking out of me everywhere. IVs. And I said, "Doc, how long am I going to be in here?" And he said, "About 8 to 10 weeks. I said, no, no, not me. I said, and they seen Ginger was staying the night every night. She was there all day. And they said, "Well, your wife takes really good care of you. We might let you go home a little bit early. I said, what do I have to do to go home? He said, you've got to walk 8 foot forward and 8 foot back. Well, I had lost the protein in my system. So the biggest veins in your body go from your butt to your feet, and they're filled with protein and blood mixed together. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes us walk. That's what keeps us going. Well, my protein had begun to seep out, and it was trapped under my skin, between the outside of the vein and the skin. I said, well, give me some bags of protein. He said, nope. It's not like when you're dehydrated, Greg. Mm-hmm. Well, how do I get them back in there? Well, you walk, you drink protein drinks, you do a lot of praying. I said, okay. So the nurses would come, and they would pick up these machines, and one of them followed behind me with a wheelchair in case I had to sit down. I said, nurses, they were all about 25 or 30 years old. I said, y'all see that tile? It's called VCT. And this is what I do for a living. I strip, seal, and wax that tile. And each one of them is 12 by 12, so they're a square foot. Mm-hmm. I said, so I was in a hallway shaped in a big square, went around the nurse's desk. I said, now look, y'all got me up out of bed, and I'm holding this walker. I said, y'all count with me. Well, I didn't know it. The elevator doors had opened, and my doctors were standing behind me, behind the nurses. They started counting. I walked 100 foot that way and 100 foot back.
Oh, wow.
They took me and put me in bed. My doctors walked in. I said, Greg, we heard you done real good today. I said, I think so. He said, well, we're going to try it again in a couple of days. I said, no, we're going to try it again in a couple of hours. I said, have them back here.
Dr. Compton.
Yeah. I said, because I'm going home. And I said, what is that stuff y'all are giving me? And they said, that's morphine, Dilaudid, Demerol, round the clock. Mm-hmm. I said, look, it's got me higher than a giraffe's butt. I said, but it's not touching my pain.
Oh, wow.
And he said, well, I told you before the surgery there's some pain that medicines can't touch. And he said, that's why your eyes are crying. You're not trying to cry. Your body's crying for you. Oh, wow. I said, okay, that made sense to me. Helen, I couldn't sleep day or night for the pain, even with all this medication.
Wow.
The room I was in, the cancer floor was full, so they put me on the lung transplant floor. The helipad for Care Flight was right outside my window.
Oh, great.
I would hear this helicopter landing. I'd say, Ginger, because I was on all this medicine, I said, I think I hear them wanting me to throw them a wrench. She said, no, Greg, I think they can work on that just fine without you. I said, well, keep in mind, my lights had been on day and night.
Yeah.
I'd never been in darkness since my surgery. Finally, that third evening, I dozed off, and Ginger turned the lights off and turned the TV off, and here it comes. I wake up, Helen. I panic. There was 3 nurses in the room. These are young girls. I said, get on the floor, everybody, get on the floor. I said, they're attacking us from Iran and Iraq. I said, they want to kill all the nurses and doctors so we can't get help. I said, get under this mat. I'm pulling tubes out of me.
Oh, no.
I'm pulling and I'm grabbing this mattress and throwing. These girls are screaming. So my doctors come running in the room and turn on the light. And they said, Greg, they were Muslim. I said, hey, I know what y'all are up to. I got your number. I said, y'all are fixing to get hurt. And they said, Greg, where do you think you are? I looked around a little bit. I said, it looks like a hospital room. He goes, have you had surgery? I said, oh, yeah, I did. Yeah. He said, well, come outside and lay on this gurney. You're going back to surgery. We got to put all these tubes back. I ripped the whole bridge of my nose out.
Oh,
it was hanging on that when I pulled it. Oh, it was painful. So painful. But I got to go home in 8 days. I think the nurses...
They were ready for you to go home.
So, Helen, it's funny how God will use an experience to touch people. God knows today what my intentions are. And my intentions are pure. To give someone hope, when it looks like there is none.
Right.
Maybe somebody will call me to pray with them or talk to them or sit with them at the hospital or the doctor or, just whatever. Mm-hmm. It would be such a privilege to do that. But I know that God has put this chapter in my life for a reason. I know He has.
Oh, yeah.
And so these young nurses that we're talking about every day, they would come in the room and me and Ginger would be praying. They were Christians. They would start telling me Bible verses, and I would start telling them Bible verses. Right? Mm-hmm. So before you know it, it's like we were having church in the hospital.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, there was a nurse named Anna. She was probably 25, and she wrote me that letter you're holding. I'm wondering if you could read that. And please keep in mind, I'm not bragging on Greg. I'm bragging on God. I want Him to have all the honor and glory.
So we do not lose heart, though our outer self is wasting away. Our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. Every night as I drive to work, I pray for my patients, that the Lord would work through me to bring joy, peace, and healing. I also ask that each patient would be able to see God in me and learn about Him through me. Every once in a while, I get a patient that teaches me more about the Lord than I could ever hope to teach others. And you have been that. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you consistently thank and compliment your RNs and PCTs. Your attitude, positivity, and influence will long outlast your hospital stay. I am praying for you by name that the Lord will bring supernatural healing to your body and spirit, that this will be done, that He would teach you and others through you about His loving character, and that His name be glorified in this. Thanks again, Anna. Wow.
Praise God. Man.
Wow. Quite
now,
amazing.
Folks, this is going to come into play in here in a minute. I'm fixing to get into the heart of this. So she gave me this letter about 6 or 7 days before I left the hospital. And it meant so much to me. And anyhow, I want to go back to the surgery briefly. They were getting ready to roll me into surgery, and all of my doctors stopped at the swinging doors and said, "Greg, would you like for us to pray for you?" I said, "Lord, yes, pray for me. If anybody's got some oil, anoint me," like the book of James says. Yeah, pray for me. And so they did. And I asked my doctors, I said, because I was feeling pretty good about this surgery. I said, "Do y'all mind if I say a prayer to myself before we go in there?" And they said, "Go right ahead." They backed up. And this was my prayer. And I'll have to stand before God, he says, for every word that's ever passed these lips in my lifetime. So I'll be judged for this. I said, "Dear God, it's Greg, getting ready to go in for this cancer surgery." I said, "You say that we have not because we ask not. You say that you know the desires of our hearts before we ask you for gifts. And I've got a desire, Father. During my surgery, I want to die and get a glimpse of heaven. And if it be your will, send me back and not keep me." Now, I'm either the greatest man of faith you've ever met or the craziest man you've ever met. But this is what I mean about God puts you in these situations where you have to depend on your faith. God also says that faith without works is dead. Remember that. He wants you to put prayers on those, feet on those prayers in this lifetime. He expects you to do your part on anything you pray for. So I didn't tell my doctors what I prayed for. They took me in. Anesthesia just put me under. The next thing I know, I'm out and I'm in that coma. Well, I didn't die during the surgery like I'd hoped I would, and come back to share it with people. Well, by the time I left the hospital, more protein had seeped out of my veins. But I was doing good enough, the doctors let me come home, and every morning Ginger would leave to go to work, and she would prop me up on a wedge pillow on the foot of the bed. And I had a TV tray here that had remote control on it for my stereo, for my TV, and for the lights. And she would leave me a glass of water, a protein drink. I was on a feeding tube at the house. And she had just bought me. Ginger, can you grab these, please?
You need those pajamas?
The pillow?
The pajamas.
Those pajamas behind you.
They're behind you, Doc.
Where?
On the chair behind you.
No.
Right there.
Thank you, Doc.
You can have it back.
Yeah, you need that bad.
So Ginger had just bought me these pajamas. They were brand new. And she gave me a shower that morning and she put these pajamas on me. And they were really comfortable. And of course I couldn't stand up or walk. My only fear was what if the house catches on fire, you know. But thank God it never did, and I never had to find out what would have happened. So a couple of months rock on by and I'm still in bed. I'm trying to teach myself how to walk. I'm going back to Baylor Rehab and working with the same folks. And one day I called Ginger, and I hadn't had food in a long time, solid food. And I said, Ginger, I'm craving an egg roll and some hot and sour soup. So she goes to this place here in Waxahachie, and she gets it for me. She brings it home for lunch. She puts my soup in a bowl, and for some reason gives me a big tablespoon. And she put the egg roll on a plate and warmed it up. And I took a bite of the egg roll and dipped it in that soup. Well, when I put food in my mouth, my taste buds just exploded. It's been so long since I tasted food. She was already gone. I swallowed that egg roll and it got hung right here. See, I didn't realize without that esophagus how much I could eat or what I could eat. Now I know what I can eat and what I can't, what I can digest and what I can't. And so I started coughing until there was no breath left in my lungs. And I slowly just faded back onto that wedge pillow. And I thought, isn't this crazy? I survived stage 4 cancer, but I'm going to die choking to death on the egg roll. I can see them laughing at my funeral, you know. And I got to show y'all this picture. Back in, when I was 4 years old, this was my nanny Drake and her husband, Papa Drake. And my nanny was an obese woman. And out of all of her grandkids, I was the pick of the litter. And I basically lived with her because she wouldn't let my mom take me home. I mean, she loved me. And so all of a sudden, Nanny started losing weight. And this was in '67. They took her to the doctor, and she had a cancerous tumor in her stomach the size of a basketball.
Oh, wow.
Well, they didn't know back then if you cut people open and air hits cancer, it spreads like wildfire, and that's what happened to her. Mm-hmm. So as a result, a couple of months later, Nanny passed. Well, here's what's really interesting. My grandfather died, Papa Drake, in 1952, and I wasn't born until '63. So I had never met him. That's the only picture I'd ever seen of him. So all of a sudden, I look down. I'm floating above my ceiling, above the bed. And my skin's bluer than these pajamas. And my lips are kind of purple. And I thought, my God, I'm dying or I'm dead. So something told me to close my eyes, to blink them. And God says to be absent from this body is to be present with the Lord. And when He says that, He means it. He says it's faster than the blink of an eye. It's faster than the twinkle of an eye. I've closed my eyes to blink, and I could feel this centrifugal force lifting me up, pulling me up. I knew somehow in my mind that I was going to the galaxies and the stars and the planets and the heavens. And when I woke up, I was standing up on this dirt road. And the dirt road was about that thick. And it was perfectly aligned on both sides as if it were made of concrete, but it wasn't. It was dirt. And the dirt looked like it had been freshly raked, like before a professional baseball game starts. Mm-hmm. Kind of looked like that, but it was a darker brown with an orange. So I look up to my right. Something tells me to. And I see these beautiful big white mountains, one after another, as far as I could see. And they had these green plants with 5 sticks. And it was just perfect rows of them, hundreds of thousands of them. And I've never seen white like this. I'm looking at it trying to figure out, what color is this? What is it doing? And then I look up and the sky is solid white, but it's a different shade of white. The colors in heaven are not anything that you've ever seen on earth. You can't explain how brilliant they are. Mm-hmm. There's just no words to put it in perspective. Now this is where it kind of gets crazy. You remember the note that Helen read? The nurse wrote? Look at the plant she drew in the corner. Can y'all see that? That's the plant that was in heaven on all the mountains. Right there. Now, coincidence? I kind of doubt it. That's my opinion. And so I look over to my left and I see this man standing there with a white rag, and he's polishing a car. And I look at him, it's Papa Drake. But he looks to be about 30, 35 years old. I went to say, hey, Papa. Well, it was as if I had no vocal cords. You don't talk with your mouth in heaven, it's telepathy. I read your mind and you read mine. So he said, Greg, up here we just talk with our minds. And he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, you're everything your grandmother or your nanny told me that you were. He said, I've been watching you. I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, I kept looking at the dirt, and he grinned. I done like this to the dirt. I wanted to see the dust come up. No dust would come up. He said, Greg, nothing gets dusty up here. Nothing. And my spirit was so light I wasn't leaving a footprint in the dirt. I was wearing my pajamas there and my socks. And it was just so overwhelming. So I looked over to the left a little bit further, and he was polishing a 1930 convertible Cadillac. And it had these big chrome headlights outside the body and a big chrome fender with the angel with wings on the, for the radiator cap. And guess what color it was? Root beer brown and doeskin. And it had a doeskin colored rag top. See, God knew what I liked.
Right.
And he said, Greg, this is your car. And I said, what do you mean? He said, it's for one of the good deeds you've done on earth. I said, really? He said, oh, yeah, you got a lot more coming up here. And, it was shock and awe. So he's on the driver's side of the car, and I'm on the passenger side. And he starts pointing in the car because the top's down. He goes, Greg, what is this? That turns the radio on. That's the clutch. It's for the headlights. It's for the brake, for the gas, for the... I said, Papa, why don't you get in my car and drive me around up here? And he was real adamant. He said, no, I'm not going to drive. No, I'm good. I said, well, where's Nanny? And he grinned, and he said, oh, no, you can't see her. She won't let you go back. I said, I smell her cooking. She's in the kitchen, isn't she? I looked back to my left a little bit further. There was this huge white house made of wood, and it was trimmed with black shutters. The doors was black, and the soffit was painted black. It was just an old country-looking house, but brand new. A mansion. He goes, I tell you what, you can come in our house, but you can't go past the living room. I said, okay. So I go in the house. I follow him in the house. And I see these big stacks of these cardboard boxes. They almost look like rose boxes. But it was real corrugated paper. It was. They were real strong. He said, hold your arms out. He stacked all these boxes up in my arms. He said, go set those in the back seat of your car. I said, okay. Well, I wondered what they was. So I opened one of the boxes. It was a porcelain doll with a beautiful dress on. And I thought, I wonder why he's giving me dolls, you know. And he goes, come back in here. He had smaller corrugated boxes. Stick your arms out. And if he filled them up, go set those on the other side of your car. And I said, okay. And he said, don't worry, when you get back here, we don't have any thieves. Your car will be parked in the barn and all that stuff will be with it. And I said, okay. So we walked back out to my car. And here's what I think. I think that I was in the Garden of Eden is where I actually think I was. Now, he never told me that for sure. I knew I was in a part of eternity. But I think from the plants and the mountains and the things like that, that's where I was at. What they would call the portals of heaven, the beginning of heaven.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, something told me to blink my eyes again, and I did. And when I opened them, I was floating above my ceiling in our bedroom. And I'm looking at my body, and now I'm really blue. And just like a deck of cards, my body lifted in half, and my spirit went back in. My lungs were full of air, and I coughed, and that egg roll rolled across the floor.
Wow.
And I struggled for about 10 minutes to catch my breath and get right. So that evening when Ginger came home about 6:30, sitting on the edge of the bed in the dark, and she goes, how was your day? I said, I walked today. She goes, oh my God, did you cut yourself? Did you break any? We got a lot of glass at our house. I said, no. She goes, Greg, what do you mean you walked? I said, Ginger, right now I don't know how to tell you what happened to me. I said, I'm dwelling on it in my mind, going over it. And when I said, I'm forgetting a part of it. She said, forgetting a part of what? I said, I'll tell you later when I can. About 2 weeks went by, and I drove myself crazy going over this story again and again and again. What am I forgetting to say? What, you know, there's something that happened I must be forgetting. I could feel a void in my heart with this story. And so one day it's like the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, Greg, what was not in heaven that is on earth? Time. How do you speak time into existence where time has never existed? That's eternity. It never ends. If we're in heaven, I can't say, Helen, meet me tomorrow night at 8 o'clock and we're going to go to Hallelujah Square. The angels are going to be singing. It's not like that. If you ask somebody in heaven, how many years have you been here? They would say, what's a year? How many hours? How many minutes? What does that mean? It would be like a foreign language to them. That's when I finally told her the story, when I knew I could tell it exact like it was.
Right.
And so, you know, me and Ginger's talked about it, and I know if this hits social media, which I hope it does, that I'm going to have my critics. I'm going to have people that are doubtful, and I get that. I really do. I get it. I think it freaks some people out. You know, I think a lot of people don't know what to think. But you might say this to sum up my life. You might say that death saved my life, if that makes sense. That's how I feel inside.
Right.
And somebody asked me, Greg, how has cancer, your experience with cancer, changed your life? And I said, well, and I've told Marianne this several times, I said, sometimes the greatest act of courage that a human being can show is simply living another day. And sometimes it takes more courage to live than it does to die.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember my prayers being in bed, God, please heal me or kill me. Heal me or kill me. One day, Ginger left me sitting on the foot of the bed, and I had a wheelchair there. And I managed to pull myself over into it, and I rolled myself into the bathroom. And my vanity's on the left, and hers is on the right, and it's got big mirrors. And I grabbed the sink and the edge of the counter, and I pulled myself up. You know, God says the eyes are the mirror of the soul. Why do you think when you get your eyes dilated, they're looking for brain tumors, diabetes?
Right.
There's all kinds of things they can tell just by looking through your eyes. And I got up in the mirror and I got real close to it, and I said, Satan, me and you need to have a conversation. I said, evidently you don't know who in the hell my Father is. I said, he's the King of all kings. He's the Lord of all lords. He's the judge of all judges. He controls all the money in the world. He holds the keys to death and to hell. Peter holds the keys to the heavenly gates. I said, and I didn't invite you to raid my body and invade it. I don't know who you think you are. But I rebuke you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Get out of my life, get out of my blood, get out of my soul. Flee from me now. And I meant every word of it.
Oh, yeah.
And then another thing I did was I took these little Post-it notes and I put them all over our mirrors on the outside of the shower door. And I would put verses on there, or I would put motivational sayings on there. You know, that just to help keep my attitude. But the thing was, I never even thought of surrender. I mean, I thought, you know what, if you're going to take me out, you're going to have to. Because this old boy's been through some tough crap in his life. And my life's not been easy.
But you know what? I think, just from hearing your story, that the Lord made you a tough cookie from the get-go. And through your life experiences, it was preparation for this day.
That makes sense. Nobody's ever put it to me that way, but that does make sense. You know, and he knows the situation we're in.
He does.
And
I think he wants to use you to comfort and speak with others that are going through cancer or, illness and their mortalities in question. And I think that maybe he has chosen you to be the one to bring people to him and to deliver others.
I hope so, because, I told Ginger after the surgery, I said, I hope I haven't went through all this in vain. I want to share my experience. I want to touch people's lives if I can. And God knows the intentions of my heart.
Right.
And he knows how sincere I am.
And he's the only one that matters.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what other people think or if they're going to judge you on your near-death experience or anything else, because he is strong within you. He's got this, and so do you.
Praise God. So I hope today have given some of you hope if you need it. I hope it's encouraged you to take the next step in life. Listen, we all face our own demons in this world, in this life, every day. But I hope this makes you want to charge the gates of hell with a water gun. I mean, don't go down without a fight. Don't. I mean, man, I'm telling you, God, people say he don't work miracles anymore, like in the Bible. Are you serious? You better look at my life. You better look at me. And I'm nobody special. I'm nobody special. Believe me, I'm not man, I like a good margarita with Mexican food. I like a good cold beer with a football game, If I hit my thumb with a hammer, you're going to hear me say some awful words. I'm human.
Absolutely.
But that's the thing. I tell God, I'm just human. I'm mortal. I'm going to have sin in my life.
And he knows that.
Yeah.
And he died on the cross for it. Seems real complicated. It's not. All you have to do is accept the Lord as your Savior, as your personal Savior, and he's got you.
Well, my favorite verse in the Bible is Hebrews 11:1, which says, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. In other words, when you pray for something, believe you've already received it. That's faith. That's how simple faith is. Billy we were talking about fishing. They went fishing yesterday. I tell you what, if more people in the world would pray and meditate when they go fishing, because that's a perfect place to do it, even if they're not biting. But I got a feeling they're not doing it because we don't have a shortage of rod and reels right now. But if we ever do, I hope you think about that.
Yeah.
Fishing's good for the soul in a lot of ways.
And water's purifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we'd love to get out on Lake Fork and look at the tree line and the wildlife and the stars at night, the sky, the moon. It's just beautiful.
Amazing beauty. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Well, Helen, I thank y'all for having me here
Thank
today.
you, and it's so great to hear your story and to know that you are a living miracle. You are cancer-free, and you're just going to keep on trucking. I do believe that.
It's just unbelievable. I went 3 weeks ago for a CT scan. They said, come back in a week to the oncologist and we'll read it. And he walked in the room and said, Greg, you're my miracle man. And he hugged me. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I've been telling you for 5 years you're in remission. Now I'm telling you you're healed.
Yeah. Amen.
I said, from stage 4. And he said, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He said, do you realize what a miracle you are?
Absolutely.
I mean, he said, wow, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I said, well,
You
God
had
is...
lots of people praying for you,
Yeah,
and you've got
and
the Lord in your corner.
And,
so.
you know, you can feel it when people are praying for you, and I appreciate every prayer that anyone's ever said for me and Ginger.
Amen.
So...
Well, Greg, thanks for being with us today. And
You're
thank
welcome.
all of you for being here to listen to his story.
Love you, brother.
Just a little preface on this song. You'd mentioned the Apostle Peter. You mentioned him as Saint Peter. I wrote this song about the Apostle Peter, and back in I think I'd tell Greg about that. I think it was 1993 or something. Like a lot of songwriters, you get in a writer's block sometime, and for me it was like. I went like a year, I'm like, I don't write anything, couldn't write anything. And it was like this voice, and God just said, hey, write one for me. What a good idea that was. And, and he said, in fact, this tithing thing is about your talent. I mean, farmers grow crops, and they're supposed to tithe with their crops. Songwriters, what are you supposed to tithe with?
Songs.
So when I wrote this song, it was about, I thought about, and I think you and I have talked about this a lot, but I wrote this song about what I thought the Apostle Peter might say to us if he were sitting with us right now, just in kind of modern language. And it's called You Should Have Seen Him Walking, and if you want to sing, you'll get it real quick.
Yeah, y'all just
Okay.
hop in anytime.
See if I can remember this new key. Remember this one?
Oh, yeah.
Guys and I were sailing out on old Galilee. John was getting shut-eye, and Andrew was talking to me, when all of a sudden it happened. A storm came from out of the night, the wind and waves tossing us about. We were fearing for our lives, and just when we thought it was hopeless, Jesus to the rescue again. He made it calm in the bat of an eye. The weather, listen to him, and you should have seen him walking. Come on, y'all. Should have seen him walking on the water. Should have seen him walking. Should have seen him walking across the water to me. I asked him, Lord, can I do that? And he just said, come, my friend. The water, it seemed so solid as I focused on him. I was doing all right for a while, but then I glanced around. I saw the storm and fearing again, I started sinking down. In the peril of the moment, it went away with the touch of his hand. He pulled me up, put me back in the boat again, back with all of my friends. Should have seen him walking. Should have seen him walking across the water. Should have seen him walking. Should have seen him walking across the water to me. Seem to be the way of life, you know. That's just the way it is. When we take our eyes off the master, we get lost in our sin. But we've got an intercessor who loved us from the start. Save us from our difficulties and He'll renew our heart like Greg's heart. You should have seen him walking. Should have seen him walking across the water. You should have seen him walking. Should have seen him walking across the water to me. Should have seen him walking. You should have heard him talking.
Amen.
There you go.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
My soul is full.
Well, we are so glad you
He's
were here
always
with us
liked
today.
that song, and I'm honored
Oh, yeah.
that you like it.